dozens of hagiographic eulogies produced by media outlets upon the death of Franz Beckenbauer. Well, here we're going to analyse the darker side of the German football legend following his three great eras linked to the sport. We begin with the cheating footballer. He may have been one of the most stylish and cleanest players when it came to keeping the ball on the foot, but he was undoubtedly one of the dirtiest when it came to cheating. His Catholic morals must have been severely challenged when he was one of the stars of the West German state doping program from virtually the beginning of his professional career with FC Bayern in 1963. It was not until 50 years later that the German Ministry of the Interior published a report showing that the 20-year-old Franz Beckenbauer was fully doped with amphetamines during the 1966 World Cup in England. And not only that, up to 3 players in that German team tested positive for ephedrine in the doping controls, according to the Serbian FIFA doctor Mihailo Andrijevic. Positive in 1966, when practically nobody tested positive in anti-doping controls. But of course, in the corrupt world of football, young Franz played on, taking FC Bayern from the second division to European champions in just 10 years. And how did he do it? Well, with an absolutely unbelievable method of doping for the time, the 1970s. Thanks to Western propaganda, we all know about the shameful doping methods of the Soviet countries and East Germany. But in West Germany, and in particular involving Franz Beckenbauer himself, they pioneered an absolutely innovative artificial performance enhancement system for the time. We're talking about blood transfusions, yes. One of the methods that was perfected with later German athletes such as cyclist Jan Ullrich or skier Johann Mühlegg had its first successes in German football, in the form of the mighty leader of FC Bayern and the German national football team. Beckenbauer himself confessed in an interview with Stern magazine, "In the Bundesliga, you inject yourself with blood and take pills of all kinds. Several times a month I have blood taken from a vein in my arm and injected back into a vein in my thigh, increasing red blood cell levels and increasing the body's performance by 100 to 120%. Now, these words come as no surprise from a true Superman who played in the 1970 FIFA World Cup with a dislocated shoulder, and that was in the popular match of the century against Italy. A feat of bravery and daring that even cyclist Tyler Hamilton might tip his hat to. But it can only be done while doped to the gills, and you can ask Tyler about that too. Beckenbauer said that these blood transfusions were the key to his sudden improvement in performance from 1974 onwards, the perfect year for good old Franz. He was captain of FC Bayern, he won the Bundesliga and the first of 3 consecutive European Cups after beating Atletico Madrid 4-0 in the final at Heysel. But the great season didn't end there. Doped up like a mule, they would go on to win the FIFA World Cup on home soil after beating the best team in the world in 1974, the Netherlands, led by the hypocritical smoker Johan Cruyff. Interestingly, West Germany only lost 1 match in that tournament, and that was against their East German neighbours. Oh, no doubt these Germans were the most scientifically advanced sportsmen in the 1970s. Blood transfusions would give him 2 more European Cup wins in 1975 and 1976, as well as a European Championship in 1976. But it was not only cheating on the pitch that made good old Franz a dark character. Like Julio Iglesias himself, Franz Beckenbauer was a consummate cheat, and that had nothing to do with his supposedly Christian views. With his first wife, Brigitte, he had 3 children. Children he treated as they might as well not exist. While he travelled and scored goals in all the European nightclubs, his young children hardly had any news of their father. And that's not just me saying that. Franz himself confessed it in declarations to the popular newspaper Bild. Of course, Der Kaiser, as he was magnanimously called, was a business genius. Along with other footballers such as Pelé, Carlos Alberto and Giorgio Chinaglia, he was one of the pioneers who sold his sporting life for tens of thousands of dollars to a ridiculous football project. He signed, you see, for the New York Cosmos in 1977. Now, on a sporting level, the project was super trash. Soccer barely had a following in the USA, and there were many Americans who thought that Sly Stallone was really a goalkeeper who played with Pelé. But financially speaking, it was a bombshell. Behind the New York Cosmos was a giant, Warner Brothers, Warner Communications. And there were even shady interests from even more sinister characters, like Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, who was instrumental in getting Pelé and Beckenbauer to kick the ball around NFL stadiums. Now, for a total player like Franz, a two-time Ballon d'Or winner and a defender capable of playing as creatively as the best midfielders, that agricultural league was an absolute cakewalk. But it served to widen his network. The charismatic, loudmouthed German donned his best suit in the evenings and was able to win over the painter Andy Warhol, who dedicated a portrait to him, one to rival Marilyn or that tomato soup can, which would have come in very handy if Beckenbauer needed to conceal his famous bags of blood. But the number 6 of the New York Cosmos didn't only move to the USA to get away from his children or to earn money that FC Bayern weren't willing to pay him. He had his first tax scandal just months before he left for the USA. He was caught hiding income worth around 900,000 euros at current exchange rates. And when he left, the controversy ended. And although he returned to Germany to play for SV Hamburg in 1981, he ended up retiring 2 seasons later, back in New York, where he enjoyed the marketing of American sports. And thus began his second stint as an unlicensed manager. In 1984, West Germany lost embarrassingly to Spain, a country which had recently emerged from the dictatorship of General Francisco Franco, and that was in the European Championship qualifiers. And it was then that the Bild newspaper headlined on its front page, "Only Franz can put this right." Neither the German Football Association nor any of the German national team players had proposed Beckenbauer as a coach. Indeed, he didn't even have a coaching license. But the media of the Axel Springer Group, which was very close to Franz, made an absolutely brutal campaign for Beckenbauer's candidacy as national coach. And of course, he was chosen for the job. But supposedly he was not allowed to coach officially. So how did he do it? Well, just as he'd done all his life, he did what he wanted. He created a position for himself, calling himself team chief. Meanwhile, it was other real coaches like Holger Oschetsk or Horst Koppel who held the official position of technical director. However, it was something he was already used to. There were rumours that at the 1974 FIFA World Cup, after the defeat against East Germany, Beckenbauer, as captain of the team, kicked the coach out of the dressing room and began to direct his teammates as if he were a real conductor. In fact, he surrounded himself with those former teammates for his new role as coach, such as the legendary goalkeeper Sepp Maier, who was now to become his goalkeeping coach and who treated Franz like a demigod, literally declaring that Beckenbauer could walk on water. We are sure that he passed on his scientific wisdom to players such as Lothar Matthaus or his great friend Rudi Völler to transform a losing German team into a real meat grinder. However, in his first major event in the 1986 FIFA World Cup in Mexico, he broke all the odds by reaching the final, although he would be defeated by the doped Diego Armando Maradona. But revenge is always served on cold plates, and after losing to the Dutch champions at Euro 1988, Beckenbauer decided to go for broke at the 1990 FIFA World Cup, and there his team crushed the competition. 15 goals scored, only 5 conceded, and 0 defeats on their route to becoming champions and taking revenge on the Dutch and the Argentinians in the final, with Andreas Brehmer scoring a ridiculous penalty. A penalty where it's hard not to think of the very good relationship Franz Beckenbauer enjoyed in the upper echelons of FIFA. He became only the second man to win the FIFA World Cup as a player and a coach, and said that no team would be able to beat the Germans for years to come. He left the national team but continued to coach without a license. First at the mighty Olympique de Marseille under the corrupt former singer-songwriter Bernard Tapie, from whom he learned even more about the upper echelons of business, and then finally as interim coach of FC Bayern when he was already a member of the Bavarian club's board of directors. And now we move on to his last period as a corrupt manager. In 1991, after the experience with the corrupt Frenchman's team, he became vice president of FC Bayern, and his income continued to grow as he continued to receive income from image rights and multiple advertising contracts from his business moves in Germany, the USA, and France. Just 3 years later, his image was so popular that he was elected by an overwhelming majority to be president of FC Bayern in an election which he won unchallenged. He had it all. He'd won titles as a player, as a coach, and now as a president. However, Franz wanted more, and I don't mean women. He had 2 more after leaving Brigitte, the first wife and mother of his 3 children, whom he ignored. The same year that he was divorced, he remarried Sibylle. But the insatiable Franz, as if he had injected the blood from his thigh veins into another part of his body, just like in his best days of scoring, he cheated on her with the secretary of FC Bayern when he was already a manager, beautiful Heidi, 20 years younger, and with whom he had 2 more children, whom the corrupt grandfather-age dad supported and paid for when it suited him. But in order to cope with these increased expenses, he felt he had to increase his income. And so he decided to try to organize the 2006 FIFA World Cup in Germany. And he succeeded as a member of the executive committee. Beckenbauer was yet another member of Sepp Blatter's FIFA, i.e. in the company of other big crooks. In July 2002, 6 million francs were paid from Beckenbauer's Swiss bank account to the Qatari leader Mohammed bin Hammam, one of the most corrupt people in FIFA's history, a person who is now banned for life for this and many other cases. But he also cut deals with another of FIFA's most corrupt leaders, Jack Warner, president of CONCACAF, and in whose hands were the votes of dozens of small Central American countries that would be key to Germany hosting the world's biggest event in 2006. Of course, Franz said it was all his manager's fault and that he knew nothing about it, despite the existence of numerous images of Warner and Beckenbauer being very, very chummy together, as well as the presence of his details in documents seized by the investigators. His image was tarnished, and he had to step down as president of FC Bayern in 2009, and he had to stop attending FIFA events when he refused to help the investigation into those embarrassing awards to Russia and Qatar as organisers of the World Cup. But it all made sense. It was perfectly logical, since Franz was an ambassador, and he earned huge sums of money from none other than Gazprom, one of Vladimir Putin's biggest economic emporia. Fortunately for him, financial crimes in the spheres of power have a short shelf life and they're quickly forgotten about, and Franz got off scot-free. Because as we know, justice is not equal for everyone, and much less so for someone who played while doped, trained without a license and bought votes as a manager, and was honoured as if he were Mother Teresa of Calcutta herself. Yes, friends, surely, only in football.